Hello, welcome to Trapunto. My name is Jamie. This video is going to be about glue basting different shapes for English paper piecing that are not hexagons. It could be a little long. Get a drink and a snack, get comfy, and let's get into it. There are many shapes that you can use when English paper piecing. I would say the most common shape that most people start with are the hexagons. The nice thing about hexagons with either thread or glue basting is all the fabric is sort of self-encompassed in our shape. When we start basting different shapes like triangles, diamonds, Dresdens, tumblers, etc., we have something a little different happen with our fabric that we need to consider when we are basting and also when we are stitching them together. Let me show you what I mean by that with what I think is probably the second most common shape, and that is the diamond. There are two ways we can baste a diamond. I will show you both ways. The first way is to baste the longer edges first. And what that looks like, hopefully you can see my glue. I have a pink stick in here now. If not, you'll still be able to get the idea. So when we baste the two long edges, you will see something that happens up here with our points. Just want to make sure that's nice and snug. And I also have my Hera marker here to kind of help me, because I find some of these pointed shapes don't want to lie nice and flat. So when we baste the long sides, you can see when I flip it over, we have these. And these in quilting land are called dog ears. You can see they are both on the same side. So a little rule of thumb is the first side that you glue down is the side that your dog ears are going to appear on. And that is also the same way if you baste your diamond shapes this way. This second method is the way that I like to baste my diamonds. And you'll see why in just a moment here, once I get this all glued down. The rule applies to this too. So you can see that whichever side I basted first is the side that my ear is on, and same with this side, but now I have ears going opposite directions. The reason I like that is because if I were to sew these together like this, my ear nests nicely here. Or if I were to sew these together like this to start forming the six-pointed star, they would nest. So this is going to be a conflict here. So you want to try to avoid your ears conflicting with each other. The nice thing about glue basting is if you don't have that, you can always just take this up and rebaste it. Now, when it comes to dog ears, it is a different thing than in traditional patchwork because we don't clip these in English paper piecing. In quilting, when you have a half square triangle like this, you can see I also have dog ears after pressing my seam. And in quilting, we would trim these off, but we are also going to be still sewing the 1/4 inch seam along the side. So this is just excess, but we still have the seam allowance. In English paper piecing, this is our seam allowance. And what happens if we do accidentally trim these, or you think you might need to trim them because of your quilting training, I will show you what happens. So don't do this. So I'll trim my dog ear, thinking that I don't want to have that excess sticking out. And while that looks like a nice diamond, what happens to our seams when I open this up, so you can see I have no fabric on my point. So you can see now what has happened to my seam when we cut our dog ears in English paper piecing. And now once I cut, I don't have any fabric to knot into, because say I'm going to attach this, obviously wrong sides together, but I would sew a knot here and I would sew a knot here. But if we cut the dog ears in English paper piecing, there is nothing here to hold that. When it comes to points, you do want to make sure that you have a little bit extra on the point there so that the fabric will cover and also not be a weak point like it kind of was with those diamonds after we trimmed it, but not to that extreme level. The nice thing about most shapes for English paper piecing is a lot of them are straight edge. So you can baste as you would your hexagon or your diamond or any other shape that has a straight edge. And as I said, this is where the harem marker or something with a fine edge comes in handy, because I like to, on the other end, have something to help me crease and then have that go down to lay flat nicely. So this is a jewel, and similar with the diamond, you may need to consider which way your dog ear is facing. This is a pentagon, a sort of squished one. Using 3 of these, you can also get a hexagon out of them. And this one is where, let's see, I would typically do the bottom edge first or last or first, depending, because when I baste this down, so I tend to like to do the points of like a house shape first. So the nice thing is that this one is all wrapped. You don't have any dog ears on it. The thing though that you need to be mindful for, and I should have talked about it in my stitching video, is when I stitch, I don't go through the fold. So I would, if I was stitching this, I would kind of just pull this away a little bit and then just stitch through the seam where the paper is. Next, let's do a similar shape to that one, but this is a half hexagon. And this is the one where you might need to consider what you baste first. So I will typically do the short edge, this short edge. Let's see if we can do a half and half. So do not do this at home. This is specifically for this demo. So all I'm doing is cutting it in half so you can see what each half looks like. So the first half, I'm going to baste the side. And then I'm going to baste the bottom. And then on the second half, I'm going to baste the bottom first. And then I'm going to baste the side. Okay, so now you can see what it looks like if you were to do, as I said, so you can see with the folding. So this one was we basted the side first and then the bottom. And this one is we basted the bottom and then the side. So you can see what that looks like. So again, it depends on where you want your ears to go, what you could potentially be nesting with, you know, and those are things to consider when we are basting our shapes for our project. The nice thing about triangles, I'll do this as an equilateral triangle. So remember from math class, equilateral, all the sides are the same length. The nice thing about these is similar to basting the diamond, so the sides go all different directions. This glue stick is getting a little gnarly, but that's okay. If you find you're having trouble with your glue, if you're in a warmer climate or if you've been working with it for a long time in your hand, you can put your glue in the fridge. And the little refills, you can put them in the fridge as well, just to kind of help it firm up a bit. So you can see that we have a lot of options when it comes to our shapes. So we could have them nest nicely here. Maybe it's easier to show you on the back. So we can have them nest nicely in here. You have a good nest up here because this one is nesting nicely. Or you have a full edge that is completely clear. So if you have, say, your diamond coming in, you can have it nest nicely in there, or whatever works for the project that you're working on. So this is the equilateral triangle. And this is an isosceles triangle. So these two sides are the same and the bottom is longer. And I believe this one is going to be similar to this shape here. So why don't we test that theory out? So again, do not do this part. I'm just doing it for this demo. Depending on what you need for your project or the shapes that you're working with, this is basted with the side down first and then the bottom coming up. And this is with the bottom first and then the side. So you can see how your triangles would look. All right, this is a tumbler. And I feel like it's going to be the same. So maybe we're finding a trend that if your top is shorter than your bottom, then we're going to get these situations where our tails are going to face a different way. So I'm going to science it. And I think my theory is starting to have a little bit of evidence here. So as you can see, again, we have tails going different ways depending on what side. If you do the side first and then bottom, or bottom first and then side. Now this one is a big triangle with a big point. There are triangle shapes that you can get that are even finer points than this. And what I prefer to do with ones like this is I will do the bottom. Again, I'm getting a lot of nice glunge here. And then I prefer to do the long one. So if I basted the sides first and then the bottom, my points, my dog ears would be going whoop out that way. But I didn't do that, so they go down. And I find if you're building a star like this anyway, these are not the same size. This is 2 inch, this is 1.5. So that's why it doesn't fit. But for pretend's sake, so we would have a point coming out of each side of the hexagons. So that's why I like to have my points down on these triangles, because it's going to nest, but it's going to nest nicely against the hexagon in there. So now I am going to venture into curves. So the nice thing about this shape here is we have straight edges and a curve on top. So what I usually do, and again, I don't work with these shapes a whole lot. So if you have any tips and tricks, please let me know. So I will do the bottom and the sides. And now we have a curve. So if I was to try to baste this as I normally do, it's not going to go so great because it's not a straight edge and we're going to have puckering happen here. So what I do on convex curves is I will snip. That's where these little guys come in handy. You can use any scissors you like, but I like these ones. So when we are cutting our paper, I'll zoom in a little bit here. I want to snip in here, but I don't want to get too close to the paper because remember, we do still need fabric to sew. And what I do is I will eyeball and kind of start in the middle. So I'll make a little cut, say like here. And hopefully you can see what I still have left here. So you can see how I still have a fair amount of seam left in there. And then what I'll do is I want to stay perpendicular, so kind of 90-degree with my paper when I'm cutting. And I don't do a whole lot of cuts, and this is a pretty big shape, so we have some wiggle room in here. So I'll do 2 cuts either side. If you need to add more, add more. You can always cut later. Okay, so we've got it all cut. And then what I will do is I prefer to go one side and then the other side. So I'll start from the middle, baste one end, and I'll start from the middle and push this one down, and then the next one, and then the last one. And then I'll come back into the other side, and I will put a little glue on top of the middle one. And then we're going to go, again, middle out. So you can see, say in this one is a really good example, how the fabric is overlaying itself. You can kind of see that. And then that's what it looks like on top on our right side. So you do get a little bit out, but I mean, it's not that bad. Okay. So I showed the apple core. This one is also common in English paper piecing. I haven't worked with it a whole lot just because it's kind of awkward and it's all flat back. Maybe I should do an apple core project to get my flat back going. So what I would like to do for this one, you can glue baste without cutting if you really want to. I just find it's a little awkward. So let's do it on this one. So again, I'm not going to cut. I'm going to put glue around, and then you're kind of going to do sort of a little dumpling fold, I call it. So you can do it this way. And honestly, I guess a positive point of doing it this way is you are not cutting your seams. So you don't have to worry about having no fabric to stitch through. The only thing that isn't my favorite about it is you kind of get this look. But honestly, I guess once it's stitched and you have like another apple core stuck here, I don't have another shape, for example, but say this shape here, and you have another one here and you've taken your papers out, this kind of jagged look is going to go away anyway. So you can really see on the apple core how the fabric, you have your little flaps and how the fabric just overlays itself. Now on the concave, I don't think there's a way that you can do that without cutting, If there is, please let me know. So with the concave, I'm going to again cut, and I am going to cut in here, even though this is, actually, maybe I'll lift it up, see what happens. So I'm going to cut here, here, and I cut in here. And then I'm going to lift this a little bit and then cut in there. And I think that's just the nature of concave curves. And again, one up, middle up. You can see how they really want to get up there. But you can see how I said the fabric is going to go weep, and that's exactly what it's done here to match that curve here. Now these are a little loosey-goosey. It's not bad though. I would still stitch with this. It's just not as, you know, drum tight as I usually like my pieces to be. And then there's our little apple core. So yeah, fun times. I have some other shapes that you might recognize. So these two are for the Drunkard's Path. And again, the nice thing is there are straight edges, so we get a little break from curves. But we do have a convex and a concave that we have to deal with. So there's our one piece of the Drunkard's Path. And there are our pieces for the Drunkard's Path. Now this one is also nice because it has straight edges and it has both curves. And also with concerning this kind of puckering that's happening here, I really wouldn't be too worried about that. And you're going to sew it anyway and then take the paper out. Okay. I've never basted one of these before. This is a lemon wedge, I believe. And with this one, it is a little small, but I think my seam allowances will be fine. Yeah, I think it'll be okay. So these are two convex curves, so we'll see. Now the lemon wedge usually goes with the apple core. Ooh, see, and now we got to be careful up here. I think that'll be okay because I was going to snip here, but if I snip in there, that might be a problem for my point. We'll see. Okay, that's actually not bad for the first time doing that. And similar to our apple core, I do have a little bump right there, just like I have a little bump right there, but it's not going to be a problem. So if I were stitching this, I could put the bump in. And now these lemon wedges do not fit with this apple core. But if you had the correct shape or the correct size of apple core, this would make a circle. If you had another wedge here. So I bought this to go with this. And I've been saving this for last because these shapes scare me a little. This is a clamshell. And I have seen people only baste the top arch because usually another clamshell is going to sit in here. So pretend this is paper again. Another clamshell is going to sit kind of like in here, and another one is going to sit in here. So if you have this fabric non-basted, you're really just going to be nesting your next piece on top of your thing anyway. I have seen people baste the bottom, and I feel like even this paper is struggling to stay pointy because it's just so fine. And now with these ones, like this shape goes in here. So again, you could have a circle. Let's do the curve because I know we can do the curve. Let's see what happens if we do the inside. So some people, as I said, will literally leave it like this. And then you might not be, I'll use the Hera marker here so you can see where the paper is. So hopefully you can see where the Hera marker has now marked this is where the paper is in here. I know I went off a little bit, but that's okay. So this is what I mean about not basting the bottom here, because another clamshell usually fits nice right in there. And then you have sort of this scale pattern. But as I said, I have seen some people baste the whole thing. And part of me, I don't know why you would do that, but I'm curious to see how difficult that's going to be and to maintain this very, very fine point in here. So here we go. We're going to science it. Yeah, man, I don't know about this point. Okay. So I'm going to really, really try to go down this paper and beyond it here to get, because I really want this fabric to lie nice. So I'm actually going to do the whole thing, which I usually do not do. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Okay, that is like that point. Gosh. Okay. Let's see. Okay. It's doable unless you, for whatever reason, are doing. So there are shapes that I have seen. Let me zoom out a little bit here. I have seen ones where they're like this. So this is one where you might need to baste in here. But again, if you have another clamshell here, right, and then you have another one here, and then so it kind of tessellates like that, you still wouldn't really need to baste in here, I don't think. So you could baste the entire clamshell for that if you really wanted to. I feel like that would be more trouble than it's worth, to be honest. Not that this is bad, especially for a first time trying to baste a shape like this. However, I think it would make your life easier if you don't need the shape to be by itself, to just have the fabric out, not even basted, just baste the top. And then you can add your shapes in here. And these are supposed to fit in here. Okay. So you can see again, so this lemon wedge is supposed to fit in, well, maybe the whole point doesn't go down there. I grabbed some paper pieces. And as I'm learning, I don't think the point is supposed to even go all the way down in there. Let's see with raw paper. So this is a clam, and as again, you can see these points are just hanging on for dear life. So if I put the wedge there and the other wedge there, The point does, God, it does go all the way down. Oh my goodness. I think that would be very, very difficult to properly baste that point all the way down. I think I did pretty good, but as you can see, it's not as fine, even with the Hera marker. This little chonky point. So anyway, that's the glue basting video. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Happy to help. And I do plan on doing a thread basting video for all of the shapes that you just saw. So stay tuned for those, and I will see you next time.